It's a perfect situation.
Hello, this is Liz. Welcome to my little urban homestead and my series on food preservation, freezing. I was asked about these jugs plastic containers that I freeze milk in, and it's the amount that I use to make a yoghurt. And one of the comments was, how can I make just a small amount of yoghurt? Which is quite easy. I make it in a thermos flask, and this holds just over this amount, so they go together well. And I will put a link, an iCard link to the video that shows you how I make yoghurt using a thermos flask. If you've got a bigger one, and I do have a bigger one of these, you can make a larger batch of yoghurt. But as Leitch doesn't like yoghurt and I do, there's only me, so I'll make a small batch, last me a few days. Last week I talked about things that you can freeze that require no preparation at all. This week I'll be talking about things that need preparation before they're frozen. People are possibly wondering why we actually blanch some vegetables before they're frozen. Blanching is mainly to preserve the colour and the taste and the texture of the item that you're freezing. It also helps to retain nutrients that can leach out of it while it's frozen. But you do lose some nutrients in the blanching process, but I'll get on to that in a moment. Blanching can take anywhere between 1 and 10 minutes depending on the size and type of food that you are blanching. Now there are basically 3 methods for it. One, you can plunge in boiling water for between 1 and 10 minutes. You can steam it between 1 and 10 minutes, or, I've never done this, but I've heard that you can microwave steam it. But I don't use my microwave really for cooking. I'm more old school. Right, to steam blanch your vegetables. This is my steamer. It's small, but I do it in batches, and I actually prefer doing it that way in batches. So it's brilliant for me. You put your water in the bottom pan, bring it up to a boil, and while that's coming to a boil, put your prepared vegetables in these colander like pots. When this is to a boil, you can put that on top, lid on top, and it should still be boiling, and you want it boiling the whole time that your timer is going, whether that be 1 minute, 2, 3, 5, whatever. You put your timer on and let it run for that time. When it's had its time blanching, then if you're doing just this batch and nothing else, turn your heat off, plunge your vegetables into ice cold water and let them cool down in there. That's for steaming. For plunging in boiling water, you can use, depending on how much you've got to do, you can use a pot this size, or a pot this size, or a pot this size. And that noise is where I store my rack. Prep and water bath canning, just a few jars. Or this is nearly as big as a 23 quart pressure canner, and you can use that. It's there at the moment, it's full of peppermints, defrosting, as I'll be canning up some dog food soon. For demonstration purposes, I'll be using this. Now for blanching and boiling water, you put your water in this pot and bring it to a boil. When it's boiled, you put your prepared vegetables in. Whereas in a steam canner, you only just basically put a layer of them to allow the steam to go round. You can put more in a pot this size, but don't pack it full because you need all the boiling water to get round all the food. Once you've put your vegetables in there, put the lid back on, bring it back to a boil, because although it was boiling before, as soon as you add your vegetables, that's going to lower the temperature down, so you need to bring it back up to boiling. When it's boiled, with your vegetables in there, then you can time it for 1, 2, 3, 5 minutes, however long you're doing it for. When it's done, you can get a colander and a bowl, and if it's just the one batch that you're doing, you can empty it into your colander and throw the boiling water. Now that to me is a bit of a waste, because that boiling water has got some nutrients from your vegetables in. So what you can do is several things. One, I let the water cool, take my veg out, drain it, and I'll go through what you do then in a moment. But once this blanching water has cooled down, normally it's the next day, I will put it in a jug into my refrigerator, and over the space of a few days I will feed this to my chickens. That way they are getting some nutrients out of the vegetables, because I'm giving them in their water. If you haven't got chickens but you have got a garden, you can actually use this to water your plants with, because those nutrients will help the plants that you're growing. It could be indoor plants or outdoor plants. If you have no indoor plants, no garden at all, you can, because normally on vegetables and that you've got peeling scraps if you've washed the items first. So you've got peeling scraps, the outer leaves. You can make a vegetable stock using blanching water and all those vegetables peelings. Sorry about that, it's my fingering, love. Yeah. This blanching water, you can then use all your peelings, especially if you've been saving some up in the freezer, you can add them to it and make a vegetable stock. If you have a pressure canner, you can then pressure can it, because it needs pressure canning. You cannot water bath this. So you can make vegetable stock broth from that blanching water and the vegetable you've got. So you're keeping those nutrients, you're not throwing them down the drain. If you haven't got a pressure canner and still want to do this, you can reduce the amount of water that you use to cook them down in, and then once you've sieved out all your peelings and got just the liquid left, you can reduce that further by boiling it for quite a while on the stove, and it'll go a bit thicker. And then you can put it in some containers similar to these, and when they're cooled down you can freeze them, and then you can pull out when you're making gravy. You can pull out one of these, let it defrost, and you can use it to make the gravy. That way you're getting all the nutrients, you've not lost any of them. Or if you are making a crock pot meal, you can add this to it to give it the flavours as well. There's a lot you can actually do with this. That's why if you're boiling some rice up, you can add this instead of water, so you will get the nutrients from all that veg soaked up by your rice, so you will end up eating all those nutrients. Because water doesn't flavour your rice or give you extra nutrients or anything, but this will. So that's a couple of things you can do. Stop digressing and carry on. Right, right. So we've taken the vegetables out of here and put them in a colander sitting in a bowl of ice cold water. Basically, as soon as they go in, that water is going to start warming up. So I always make sure I've got 2 colanders of ice cold water, because as soon as this one started warming up, I empty my vegetables into that one, which is full of ice cold water, and leave them there for the amount of time. If you boil them for 2 minutes, you make sure they have 2 minutes in the ice cold water. If you've boiled them for 5, make sure they have 5. Once they've had the amount of time they're cold, I take them out, drain them off, put that on my draining board. Leave it to drain for a few minutes. Normally, because I do it in batches, I'm sorting out another batch. But once they've drained for a few minutes, get a clean, dry tea towel, empty your vegetables on there. And I fold it up and leave them to drain some more. Now if they're leafy vegetables such as spinach or kale or even parsley, broccoli, different things, I've now bought myself this salad spinner, so I'll be able to spin moisture off them instead of using the tea cloth method. But that works, I've been doing it for years. Hopefully that method will work. We'll see. But once they've cooled down, you can then decide, do I put them in bags and freeze them, or do I put them on a baking tray for about an hour in the freezer to freeze them up individually, then bag them up and put them back in the freezer. The decision is up to you, because if you put them all in together, they can clump together. But the decision is then up to you. And that's it for this week. Join me next week. See you then. Bye.
It's a perfect situation.